Prusa Slicer is the slicer that we use at Crimson Robotics to prepare our models for 3D printing. It has lots of options and produces excellent prints. There are 4 main areas to the slicer: the platter, where you import and position your print; the print settings, which allow you to tweak the print to increase the quality or speed; filament settings, which we rarely change; and the printer settings, which we also rarely change. I'm not going to go over every setting, but simply highlight the settings that we tend to use more frequently. The first thing we do is import our model. Your model must be exported as an STL from Onshape and use millimeters as the unit of measure. We're going to import the classic Benchy. The Benchy model is used to test how well your printer performs. It has challenging overhangs, some bridging, and fine details. Once your Benchy is imported, you can move your model around by clicking on the model and dragging it around the bed, or platter as it's sometimes called. You can also position the model by selecting the Move button on the left, or by entering X, Y, and Z positions on the lower right side. The majority of our models will already be the exact size that we need them. However, you can also scale your model by selecting the scale icon on the left and using the handles or the cubes to resize your model. You can also precisely scale the model by using the scale and size factors on the right-hand side. It's important to rotate the model carefully to ensure it's positioned to reduce bridging, supports, and maximizes the area on the plate to ensure good bed adhesion while printing. You can rotate your model by selecting the model and using the rotate icon on the left, or by precisely rotating using the degrees of rotation on the right. However, the easiest ways to ensure you clearly have a side that will stick to the bed is to select your model and then the Place on Face icon on the left side. This allows you to select a face of your model without worrying about the exact degrees of rotation and is highly recommended. Sometimes we need to print more than one of a model. Simply select the model and click the Add Instance button at the top. As instances are added, the models might overlap. Simply click the Arrange button at the top to have the models appropriately arranged on the plate. Most of the time, the Arrange button will work just fine. However, you can always tweak the arrangement by manually moving the models. As we start to configure our settings, you can select a quality or speed setting on the top right-hand side. We typically use PLA, and the Prusa PLA setting will typically work with the Micro Center Inland brand of PLA we use. For the printer, we select original Prusa i3 MK3. Sometimes our models need support. Please talk it over with a coach to make sure that bridging will not work. Supports can be selected for the whole model or just supports that would be needed from the plate. Sometimes you need supports from the plate only and will be able to bridge the remainder. We typically use 15% or 20% infill for prototypes and 40% infill for final designs. We found that 40% infill makes a very strong part, and 40% tends to be the point of diminishing marginal returns. In other words, infills above 40% tend to not increase the strength that much. As a side note, Stefan from CNC Kitchen regularly tests and researches different 3D printing materials and techniques. I highly recommend his YouTube channel if you're interested in 3D printing. Now for the print settings screen. Rolling over each item on the settings screens will give you a detailed description of each option. Also, notice the Simple, Advanced, and Expert mode. It's highly recommended that you do not change Advanced yellow or Expert red settings unless you have spoken with a coach. For prototypes, we typically use 3 perimeters and 3 top and bottom layers. For final parts, we found that increasing top and bottom layers and perimeters to 5 increases the overall strength. Beyond 5 typically does not help strengthen the part. We've already talked about fill density. The strongest fill pattern is generally a 3D fill, such as a gyroid fill pattern. We typically leave the top and bottom at their defaults. We are showing an alpha release of Prusa Slicer. It has an experimental option for ironing. These options may or may not be in the final version. Ironing makes the top of your part look good and smooths it out. However, it does add time to your print. A brim is used to hold a part down. It can be used for a print that has a minimal surface area on the bed to increase the print bed adhesion. We talked about supports before, but supports can be fine-tuned on the screen. Roll over each option and talk with your coach to see if you need to tune supports. Generally, it's not recommended to change any of the options from speed on down on the screen. Next is the filament settings. Typically we use the Prusa PLA setting. You will not need to change any of these settings. The only setting on the screen that might need to be tweaked is the temperature for the extruder. We typically recommend it at the recommended 215 degrees centigrade. Depending on the filament recommendations, you might consider tweaking the extruder temperature setting in collaboration with your coach. We do not change any of the rest of the settings in the filament area, again, unless you explore those settings in collaboration with your coach. Next is the printer settings. The printer settings area is very rarely changed. The only setting that might be changed is under Extruder 1. The nozzle diameter might be changed if you install a new nozzle with different size diameter. This should be undertaken with your coach, as changing out a nozzle involves heating the printer up to normal printing temperatures and removing the nozzle while it is hot and installing the new nozzle. Finally, we slice and export our model in the platter view. Slicing and exporting is done from the main platter screen. Click on the Slice Now button. After it finishes slicing, you enter the preview mode. Note the two buttons in the lower left-hand corner toggle between 3D Editor View and Preview. In preview mode, you can use the sliders on the right-hand side of the preview to view a particular layer. This can be very valuable to view problematic areas of bridging or tough overhangs. Once you're satisfied with the slicing, you can click the Export G-Code button. A Save dialog box will appear, and you can save the file to your SD card. You should be off and running now with Prusa Slicer. If you have any questions, ask a coach or a mentor. And until next time, don't forget that you make a huge difference on your team. Peace out.